What is your dream you gave up on? Your dream as a kid, your dream even as an adult, your dream as a 20-year-old, your dream, coming out of high school, your dream as a entrepreneur, your dream that you wanted to become and change the world. What's your dream that you gave up on? I think it's relevant, especially at this moment in time. It's January 1st, 26th. It's the Sunday after Martin Luther King Day and presidential inauguration. And, you know, what is that dream that you gave up on that still sits inside you somewhere? Or maybe you have to dig down and find it, or maybe it's changed and there's nothing wrong with that either. But yeah, what is that dream you gave up on? For me, it was I wanted to be a New York Times bestseller, and yeah, I haven't done anything towards that in the last 6 months or so, and it's relevant because that consumed me literally from like the beginning of the pandemic, and like January 2020, I started this journey of the pandemic came around. It put a lot of things in perspective, which I think we can all agree upon. And during that time, I realized I wasn't living the life that I really wanted. At the time, I was working in like a marketing company, a PR company for outdoor brands, which was really cool. Telling stories about people doing really cool stuff. But I realized that, this angst and inability to settle into that and just enjoy that was because I actually wanted to be the person who was doing the really cool things. I was like, why be the person writing about people doing really cool things when I could do really cool things and write about it? That seemed like a win-win for me, at least, and more of a fit towards my dream as a kid about changing the world and making it a better place. And wanting to do that now through writing, because that wasn't always the case. I actually hated reading and writing as a kid. I was diagnosed dyslexic, thankfully, in my small public school, and had a great program and a lot of help, and people helped me out of that. And one of the things that really empowered and allowed me to kind of grow out of that under a lot of guidance from some very amazing, beautiful humans who were very patient with me, was reading epic fantasy. And I fell in love with fantasy, and Brian Jacques' Redwall series was like everything to me as a kid. When I first, found out I was dyslexic and figured out how to read, like I had this like literal purple sheet of paper. If you're old enough, like you had the translucent papers that you would put overlays on projectors. If you're too young to know that in classes and stuff, then that's okay. But I would have this purple sheet that was transparent that I would lay over my book, my pages, and read, because it allowed me to read in a fluid left to right line. That's how we do in the West, without skipping around. Because prior to that, when you're reading, and for me at least, this is how my dyslexia showed up, is I would skip lines and skip to different places. So like you could skip down one and then skip down two and then maybe jump all the way back up to the first line in a different spot. And so it didn't make any sense because it didn't. But with the purple sheet, totally worked. And so my dream of becoming a New York Best Time seller during the pandemic kind of like transitioned into, well, I want to write epic fantasy books to help people who had the same situation that I was in, and to kind of tell stories and lessons through a fantastical setting, because that's what I really loved, is reading these books and diving deeper into seeing the different kinds of like leadership and values that they emulated, and the concepts that they struggled with around morality and evil and good and what that means. And so that was my dream, was to become a New York Times bestseller. And so in 2020, I set off on that adventure and applied to an MFA program that I got in. So I have, and I'm very fortunate to have a dual master's degree in creative writing, having never written before. So even if you've never done something before, your dream is actually still completely attainable because it's your dream. And if you're passionate about it, that passion and journey doesn't have to look like everyone else's. Like, I never took a creative writing class until January 2020, and I was 29 at the time. And decided I wanted to set off on this, and just, took an online class, signed up, started writing terribly writing. I started the first thing I wrote, well, prior to that, I spent 2 years writing, but I just spent it world building. If you know what that means, it means like creating fantastical worlds. So creating entire cultures and species and different like monsters and magic systems, and like drawing a lot of maps because I really like drawing maps. It's really fun and cathartic. And tangible, because writing isn't quite as tangible. At least I guess if you write on paper, it's a little more tangible. But yeah, so started doing that, and then jumped in and started writing, and wrote terribly for quite a while. And then fortunately, through a writing class I was able to take, and joining a critique group of other people who wanted to become writers and to share their works with the world. We met regularly and started this critique group that I found from this online writing program, and we just continued on through the pandemic, even after the writing class stopped. And we just kept each other accountable, and that momentum and that consistency and that stability really grounded me through that, and really helped encourage my dream at that important like initial phase. And I think that's something that's really important to talk about, is in that initial phase of your dream, it's really important that you find champions of you and your dream. You don't need realists. You don't need people who be like, well, only one in like 1 million writers become New York Times bestsellers. It's like, I don't need to hear that right now. Because what I hear when you say that is it is possible, because 1 in a million can do it. So yeah, it's important that you surround yourself with supportive and compassionate people, and then later on you can broaden that group to a wider audience, and that's something that you actually want to do. And so here on this January 26th, this Sunday, that marks the end of the week from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. I want to stop procrastinating about that, and be a little more accountable, and to share that story and journey that I'm going to embark upon, which is I'm challenging myself for the next year. I'm going to post every Sunday, pending life threats, or also caveat, I may record early and post still on a Sunday, basically my hot takes from the week. So what I've learned about pursuing my writing dream, and also things that I've learned from life. So I'm going to share like tips I've learned. I'm going to share resources on the best things that I've read, whether that's, actual nonfiction books, whether that's tactics and things I've learned from reading fiction books, whether that's just stuff from life, whether that's podcasts that I've listened to, anything I've heard or learned from anyone else. I'm going to share all the best kind of supporting beliefs, tactics, strategies, and resources to help you achieve your dream. Because that's what this is about. It's not about tracking my journey. It's about me being able to share my journey in the hopes that it helps you in pursuing your dream, whatever that may be. And so, yeah, that's going to be the next year. I'm going to post a video every single week, barring the fact that I am transitioning jobs right now and I'm getting into firefighting. And so, yes, I am a fiction writer who's also becoming a firefighter, EMT, and hopefully after that, a paramedic. I will become a paramedic. Words matter. Stories matter in your mind. So yeah, a epic fantasy writer and a firefighter, EMT, and dog dad, husband. So yeah, tracking this journey of, a little bit better each week and sharing those lessons along the way. So hopefully you don't have to live through the costs of learning them. You can just take advantage of the lessons and apply those positive aspects to that. So I hope this becomes a space for that as well. So the challenge is for the next year, I'm going to work and track on and document my writing for the next year. And so I initially wrote my dissertation, my manuscript that I wrote for my MFA program I called it a epic fantasy with business elements. It was initially called Undead Inc. What was the final title? We went through some different iterations. Undead Inc., an intern's survival story about debt and overcoming adversarial work colleagues, something like that. So yeah, I initially started with that and I wrote 107,000 words, which for me, like putting words on a page isn't like, it was something I had to learn how to do. And like, thankfully when I started that process, and that's something too, is to think about like whatever stage you're at, you can't compare yourself to people that are further along than you. You can, like, that's not helpful. That's like, for example, me comparing myself to Brandon Sanderson, Sarah J. Moss, Rebecca Yaros, comparing myself to N.K. Jemisin, comparing myself, to these like Tolkien, comparing myself to these epic, monumental, fabulous, fantastic writers who are so much further along in the journey that it stops me from ever going on my journey with my dream, because they're not in the same space I am. And every single person who has ever had a dream is starting right where you are or had started at that dream point. And so, yeah, finding a group of people in the same kind of stage of development with the dream, as far as like dream actualizers, like finding people that are in the same stage of their dream is really important, or just like one step or two step ahead, because then you can find people like, I can give a lot of advice on how to, like what kind of tactics and way to prime your day and how to like incorporate structure and different strategies for writing a first draft of a novel. Because I've written 107,000 words. I've actually written another draft of another manuscript, which was the first thing I've ever written, which it was a learning point for sure. So yeah, like you got to find people in the same stage you are, just ahead, who can relate and help support you in that tactic, and who are just decent humans. Like, let's be first and foremost clear. Like, that's like the number one foundational point that you want to find in other people. So finding that and pursuing that. So my dream for the next year is to take the 107,000 words that I've written, which I describe as kind of Harry Potter goes to work for the Dark Lord after going to Hogwarts and getting encumbered with debt and can't pay off his debt to Hogwarts. So he goes to work for the Dark Lord because villains pay a lot more than being a hero. So there's villain corporations, there's champion nonprofits, there's magic and monsters and accounting, like fire imps and like all kinds of cool stuff that I love. And that's part of my dream, is sharing my love about not just writing and the journey of that or the arc of like characters and the fantasticalness, but like incorporating some business elements and some finance and, talking about how crippling student debt can be, and debt in general can be, and showing ways that the character in my story goes about overcoming that. Not to say there's just one way, because there's not, but that small steps aggregate over time into this exponential curve of not just growth, but also learning and happiness and joy, and like finding that. So my goal for the next year and my challenge for the next year is to not only show up every Sunday if I'm not working in the fire station. I will post either pre or post Sunday if that's the case. Then I will show up every week and report in where I'm at, check in to see where y'all are at. So please comment below, like, follow, subscribe. And also, share the lessons that I've learned from that week along the way as well, and hope that y'all do the same in the comments. And so, yeah, the goal is to edit the 107,000 words into something that is market ready to send to agents to start querying, as we say. So basically, it's like sending out a resume and sample of the novel to agents who then, if an agent likes you, they will request a longer sample, the rest of the manuscript from you. And then if that gets through and you get an agent, which is amazing, then you start the whole process again with publishers and go through that. And then you get publishers and you get feedback and stuff along the way and may have to change things. But my goal is to, by the end of this year, I will re-edit the 107,000 words first draft of my novel because I'm making some major changes, and then start querying and see where we go from there. I think something like, the goals, like a lot of people, especially this time of year, love like goal setting and stuff. And I love a good goal. Like I love goal setting. I think it's very beneficial and helpful in the first stage to generate momentum. It's a good way to track to a degree. I think things change along the way. And yeah, I also think that my goal is actually just to show up every day and do the work, not only on here, but do the work on my novel and keep progressing that forward and seeing by the end of the year where we're at. But the goal is to have started querying by the end of the year, maybe have an agent, maybe have a publishing deal, or maybe just be through the first draft, because who knows? So my hope is that you join along in this journey and that together we can actually actualize our dreams together, share resources, share tactics, share things that worked, also share the things that didn't work, because that's equally, if not maybe more important, because there are a lot of things that don't work, and it's really nice to learn those lessons from other people who are in a similar space. So even if your dream is different than mine, you can be like, well, this really wasn't helpful for me in my situation. And I could be like, wow, that's actually really helpful. I have a different situation, but I could see a situation that's similar and learn not to put myself in that, or not to fall into that kind of like trap. So yeah, here's to being dreamers. I hope you take some time to think about your dream and share it. And yeah, let's see where we go in a year. Until then, I'll be over here believing in you and all the love and all the abundance.